Good evening. This is the Underhill Development Review Board, regularly scheduled meeting for Monday, December 2nd, 2024. We're here tonight to hear the appeal by Gordon Williamson pertaining to the interim zoning administrator's decision to issue a zoning violation for unpermitted land development, the operation of a sawmill without a permit. The subject property at 623 Pleasant Valley Road is 56 acres plus or minus and is located in 3 different zoning districts. However, the subject operation is located in Mount Mansfield Scenic Preservation District. This appeal request is subject to review under the current regulations, the 2011 Unified Land Use and Development Regulations as amended through March 3rd, 2020. The purpose of this hearing is to review the appeal and supporting documentation to determine whether or not the interim zoning administrator made an appropriate decision and to review the regulations and other municipal ordinances pertinent to the appeal application. So a couple housekeeping rules. I'll say it again about the cat. He's friendly, but don't reach down and pet him unless he wants you to. Good job. The other thing is I have to disclose that Justin Barnard's here. He's an attorney that's representing adjacent landowners. Justin Barnard represented myself and my firm, Norwich Technologies, in a civil arbitration case, and we can't determine how long ago it was. We think it was 2021. But I disclose this to the applicant's counsel and the applicant, and they don't have a problem with me remaining as chairman of the board. Otherwise, I'd recuse myself. Going once, going twice. Okay, I'm going to stick around. All right, so my name is Charlie Van Winkle. I'm the chair of the Development Review Board. To my immediate right, going down the table, is Shani Bartlett, Matt Chapik, Penny Miller, Karen McKnight, and Dan Lee. And these are the full Development Review Board folks. Are there any members of the public in attendance? And if so, can you identify yourself and state your address for the record? If your mailing address is different from your physical address and wish to receive a copy of the decision, please provide that address as well. If you're being represented by counsel, we can just go through the counsel. So we've got your contact information, Justin, right? Okay. Are there any state or municipal representatives present other than the interim zoning administrator and acting in their representative capacities?
Yes.
Who's that? Bob Stone. Bob Stone is a member of our, chairman of our select board. Bob, are you here representing the select board?
I'm here representing myself.
Okay, so you're just private citizen Bob Stone.
That's right.
Okay. So you're not representing the town in an official capacity as a select board member?
Not at this time.
Okay. Anyone else online choose to identify themselves, state or municipal official? Hearing none. The copies of the rules of procedure that the board follows, as well as an interested party information sheet, are available to all attendees for review on the town website and can also be obtained by the interim zoning administrator. Only those interested persons who have participated either orally or through written statements in a DRB proceeding may appeal a decision rendered in that proceeding to the Environmental Division of the Vermont Superior Court. If you are the appellant, a representative of the appellant, or an interested party who wishes to participate in the hearing, we'd ask that you clearly state your name prior to speaking. What I want to do now is swear in all those present who wish to speak tonight regarding the application. All individuals in person and online who plan to testify must take the following oath by responding out to you at the end of the statement. Do you hereby swear that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury? Okay, anyone online say and I do?
I do. I don't plan on testifying, but I'll go on the record in case I do.
Sounds good. That's Bob Stone. Are there any conflicts of interest, or have there been any ex parte communications on part of any of the board members other than what I just disclosed? Okay. So in regards to tonight's hearing process, the board will hear from the following parties in the following order. First, we'll hear from the interim zoning administrator, Brad Holden, and we'll hear from the appellant or their representatives. We'll hear from any members of the DRB that have specific questions. We'll go to members of the public after that, and we'll do members of the public present and then members of the public online. We'll give everyone in the room a chance to speak. After everyone has spoken, we'll give the appellant or their representative an opportunity to respond or redirect. We'll solicit final comments, and members of the board will have an opportunity to ask final questions or make any final comments. All speakers should address their comments to the board and not to other parties present at the hearing. Members of the public are afforded 5 minutes unless by request and majority consent to the board. We consent to extend the time. The board may ask questions of anyone in attendance to discuss the application. So at this point in time, the information package that was distributed by the interim zoning administrator prior to tonight's hearing will be entered into the record. The materials included in this package relative to the hearing are exhibits A through E, which were in the packet. That was the application, notice of violation, appeal of the violation, a certificate of service, and our DRB findings and decision from September 11, 2024. We've also received, in addition to what was sent out in the packet, an entry from Justin Barnard. We're calling it Exhibit F, who's representing Heather Sikorsky. And we've also received a supplement to Exhibit C, which is the full forestry management plan. The copy we received prior to this tonight had 13 pages missing. So we received that. And then the last exhibit we've got is just a legal ad in 7 Days newsletter as Exhibit G. These exhibits are available in the Williamson review file, DRB 24-02/PV623 at the Underhill Planning and Zoning Office by request, and are also available on the town's website. So we'll begin testimony by first hearing from the interim zoning administrator outlining the nature of the violation. So Brad, it's on you.
Okay, I'm just going to give a kind of a high-level summary of how we got here, just briefly. So I issued a decision on April 1st regarding a firewood processing operation where logs were being trucked in from off-site and processed into firewood for resale. The operation was taking place on the Tisbert Farm on Pleasant Valley Road. My opinion at that time was that the Williamsons' operation was an exempt forestry operation. My decision was appealed by the neighbors. The DRB held the hearing. My decision was overruled. The DRB determined that the operation was not being conducted on the same property where the timber was being harvested, and was further determined the operation was a sawmill, which is an activity that is not allowed in the zoning district. The Williamsons appealed the DRB decision to the environmental court, and subsequently that appeal was withdrawn on August 15th. The Williamsons then submitted a permit application to operate on their own property, a property located at 623 Pleasant Valley. A conditional use hearing was held on August 19th, and after deliberation, the DRB denied the Williamsons' application on September 11th. The Williamsons chose not to appeal that decision by October 11th, which was the final date of the appeal. So the DRB decision stands. After receiving emails from Attorney Barnard asking when the operations were going to cease and agreeing to give the Williamsons 10 days to finish up, I reached out to Gordon Williamson. He stated that he'd be cleaned up by October 15th. Unfortunately, according to Attorney Barnard, the cutting was still taking place. So on October 21st, I issued a notice of zoning violation. So the person receiving the notice of violation has 7 days to remedy the situation. But I never heard from the Williamsons, and finally on the 7th day, I received the appeal that's in front of you today. So the DRB made its determination, and the Williamsons did not appeal. The DRB decision stands, and we need to take that seriously. The town can be sued for not enforcing its zoning violations. If the Williamsons are going to harvest timber on their own land and process that wood, that's one thing. But my question is, what about the logs that were reputed to be transferred to the Williamson property from the Tisbert land? And what about the logs that remain on the Tisbert's land, which looks to be, in my estimation, roughly three log truck loads? That activity, according to the DRB, would be a violation if those logs are the ones being processed. I did add something here in my statement that I wanted to talk about the forest management plan, but I may reconsider that. But based on what was submitted, and it's been about 40 years since I studied silviculture in college, but after reviewing Forester Sladek's management plan, I just have to wonder if the Williamsons' land could support a 100 cord of a year operation. But I'll leave that up to the experts. And I see that there's another supplemental, the forestry management plan was broken down into 2 areas. The first area being roughly 69% hemlock stand. However, there's an additional area here of 19 acres that has substantially more hardwood on there. So I would have to review that. But that's all I have.
So you issued the notice of violation because it's in your opinion that he's processing wood on his land that's coming from an origin that's not of his property.
That is according to, yes, reputed to be logs that were transported from the Tisbert. I didn't personally go out there myself. While I did state in my, when I did talk to Gordon, he mentioned that his green wood deliveries were finished up for the year and he was processing wood for his own use, which would be fine. But if you're harvesting timber off your own land, unless it was standing dead, it would assume to be green. I would highly doubt that someone would process green wood and just stockpile it only to be loaded again and transferred out, but that's neither here nor there. I was under the assumption, based on the information that I received, that the logs being processed were logs that did not come from his land.
So in the process of developing the notice of violation, did you go onto Gordon's land at all?
No.
Do any kind of assessment as to whether or not actual cutting was occurring on his land?
I did not.
Okay. I don't mean to monopolize the questions here. Anybody from the board have questions for Brad?
I do have one question. You added an exhibit F. I do have one question, Charlie. You said there was an additional exhibit F and a supplement to exhibit E. Do we have those? Did I maybe just not see it?
So I think.
So you should have a piece of paper, pile of papers in front of you. The exhibit F is the entry of appearance from Attorney Barnard. And exhibit C supplement
down
is the full forestry management plan. Exhibit C in your packet, or what's on the town website, was missing 13 or so pages. So the full document's with us tonight.
You'll have to come to the mic. Just
I'm not going to testify, but I guess I would.
Well, for the record, you need to be on the mic.
Okay.
So.
Why don't we go switch it? Yeah. Hot seat. So I think Brad summed it up nicely. If the wood is being processed from Mr. Williamson's property, it's okay. If it's being shipped in from somewhere else, that's a problem. That's a sawmill. So, and we can go through the regulations. 10.2 exempts forestry operation, which is that kind of operation. The statute, Title 24, exempts municipalities or prohibits them from regulating that. So that's really the question. And these logs that are on the neighboring field, number one, some of those were brought there they were harvested from Mr. Williamson's property and brought there during the process to get the light industry permit, which was denied. So those were actually harvested from Williamson's property, and correct me if I get any of these facts wrong. And then some of these other logs are for the purpose of building a sugar shack to be used, sugar house, to be used as part of a agricultural operation on the property. Is there anything you want to add about?
Yep. Just to reference, there are about 5 different stacks of wood that I've got stored in Joe and Ann Tisbert's field where I was previously located. At this current point in time, the only wood that I will be processing on that field is a small scrap pile of popple, hemlock, and spruce that was harvested off my property. They were dead standing and blowdowns that we got from the December windstorm. Because of the fact that I was operating in Joe and Ann Tisbert's field this summer, I did haul them from my property down there into the field at some point because I knew I was going to start a sugaring operation this year. I do have a wood-fired arch that I burn wood in that I have to boil my sap to make maple syrup on my property. At this point in time, I have 300 taps, and I'll be adding up to almost 1,000 more on that. So I will have an agriculture operation and the forestry operation that is in place with the plan that is submitted there. These saw logs, these logs that are pictures of, that they took pictures of me moving off the field on October 19th, these are saw logs. These will not be going through the processor. They were picked up by my log truck that day. They were put onto my log truck. I hauled them across my bridge, and they are still sitting right on the right side on some dunnage to be processed by another sawmiller for building it's going to be sawed into hemlock slabs and lumber. I'm not processing those. The wood that's coming from my property is off my property. I did call Brad on September 26th, and I said all of my green firewood deliveries are done. I am not cutting any firewood for any clients. At that point, I moved my processor off the property for a week. I went up and volunteered till October 4th with my processor completely off the property in Morseville. I cut 25 cords of wood volunteering for them. I moved my processor back onto the property on the 5th. I cut 2 cords of my firewood from logs that I had stored at my house in a landing in the woods, drug them out with my tractor, loaded them onto my processor, cut them up, and I burned 10 or 12 cords a year. And I told Brad that. I said, my orders are all done. If I have wood orders that come in from this point, they will only be seasoned because it is this late in the year. And at that point, I do not have any seasoned wood, so I will be purchasing that off-site from Andy Naylor in Waterville, trucking it down to the landowners that are buying it from me, and that'll be the only wood moved by my truck at that point. From September 26th, when Brad and I talked, I have not cut one single cord or delivered it off my property from my sawmill, and I have not cut any orders. No green wood, no seasoned wood has come off that into the truck that was delivered off the property. Anything that was delivered on that truck was purchased from Andy Naylor, and I have a complete record in my phone of text messages with Andy that I've purchased 36 cords from him of seasoned wood. So any question? You look like you have a question.
I think you just answered it, Gordon. I was just trying to ascertain, so the wood that you get from Waterville is already cut. You just said it's seasoned wood,
Yep,
so you don't have
to. It's split into 16-inch and it's cut. I go up there. He has a front end loader. I load it into the truck and I truck it right to the landowner's house.
So you're not processing it on your property?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
If I do get, I did tell Brad this as well, if I do get an early Monday morning or Tuesday morning delivery or something like that, I go up on a Thursday or Friday the week before and I load it up while he's there, just so I don't have to go up at like 6 in the morning if I have a scheduled time to deliver. Like I said, the only wood that's in these piles, I think you can't see them. There's a scrap pile of wood in the back that needs to be burned. It's just limbs and stuff that were blow down and stuff. There is a load of logs there that I need to deliver to a homeowner that's not going to be even trucked onto my property. And there is one small load of saw logs left there that I need to truck off. I'm not allowed to cut down there anymore. I do have to clean up the yard and the wood lot because it was Joe and Ann's property and still is. I have to go in there and pull these logs off just because my truck's in there. I've got every neighbor that's around me going out there, taking pictures and videos. None of those logs went up to my house where we did the site visit. They all are down at the bottom, right across the bridge, 50 feet from the river, stacked there in that pile, and were not processed. I still got 2 cords sitting on my delivery truck that has not left the yard since October 9th. That is for my house. I processed that on Veterans Day, November 11th. So there's 2 cords of 24-inch wood that's sitting on my truck right now in the yard. It's been there for however long. And I've got it once the ground freezes up because it's kind of muddy back there right now. I'm going to dump it in there and then stack it in my basement, and I'll be finished with my household firewood. I did buy the sugaring arch on October 1st to boil my sap this year. I hadn't intended on it, but a good deal came up. So I now have to cut popple, spruce, hemlock, just junk, blowdowns and stuff. I will be cutting that at this point to make firewood for fuel to boil the sap on my property.
Is that consistent with the accepted management plan?
The forestry plan, yes. I am allowed to cut up to 10 cords of standing timber a year for household use, and then any blowdown or storm damage or anything like that is encouraged for cleanup as long as the tops are left in the woods.
Gordon Pennymiller, so the wood that you're processing for your sap production, you'll be processed on your property?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. It'll be processed on my property where the processor is set up now, and it'll come from my property. There's about, Brad is right, there's about 3 loads of logs left in the field down there at Joe and Ann's field. And 2 of them came from my property. Those are the 2 log piles in the back. There's one right on the property line, and then there's one kind of in the middle behind where my processor used to be set up down there in the field. It's a mixture of popple, hemlock, some old dead hard maple and stuff that's kind of punky. And then the last stuff that's right by the road that you can see right by the pull off, that stuff is getting delivered to homeowners. I'm just waiting for them they just tight on money and stuff, so they haven't called for it yet. So I'm waiting to finalize that deal, and whenever they call for it, it'll be pulled out of there as well. At that point, you'll probably get more pictures and videos and stuff of me loading my truck like this, but it's not going through my processor. Everything that I told Brad that has gone through my processor is either off my property from last year, or the remaining stuff for the sugaring arch is down in the field. There's nothing being trucked into my property. It's fall mud season. You can't truck in. This will be the first time this week that we'll be able to get into log landings and stuff because it's too muddy, and we have to comply with acceptable management practices for forestry because the loggers will get kicked off their jobs if I go in there and run it all up with my log truck. So nothing has been trucked into my house. Nothing has been cut that hasn't been cut off my property or trucked onto my property from the spot that I was previously at. So it's all my firewood from September 26th, as I told Brad, and a simple phone call, after that would have just deleted this whole thing. None of us would be here.
So I have a clarification request and a question. So at the beginning of your testimony, you indicated that there's some wood on the Tisbert's land that you have to process. So I don't know what process means, because you later in your testimony, you said there's a burn pile.
Yes.
So is that what we're calling processing? Because you're,
No, so there is a burn pile down there that's going to stay there, and I'll burn that. There is one small pile of popple and other softwood
Yeah.
in the middle, right behind, that will be brought. That was off of my property because I was set up down there this spring. I brought it off my property down there to process for sugaring. So that's wood off my property that's going to be returned back to my property and processed.
okay, so that was my second question, or my
Okay.
question is,
Yeah.
so the wood, the popple is softwood,
It's
correct?
hardwood.
It's hardwood?
Yep.
Not good for firewood or good for firewood?
Very low BTUs. You don't get a lot of heat out of it, and once it's dry, it burns very fast. So that's why you use it as kind of like a junk filler wood for sugaring.
Yeah, but that was pulled off your property
Yes.
sometime prior to the spring of this
About a
year.
year and a half ago.
Sitting there drying.
Yep.
Now you're gonna move it back when the ground freezes
Yep.
because you don't want to get your truck stuck.
Right.
We
It's
get
not fun to do that.
we get that. Okay. I've answered my questions. Unless you have anything else you'd want to share with the, oh, Penny's got a question.
Penny Miller. Gordon, I don't think this is a question for you. I think it might be for your consultant. It looks like you are asking for two things here. It says the appellant seeks a determination from the DRB and the town that he is in compliance with the regulations and the notice of violation be dismissed. That's one thing that I see. And then the next one that I see is appellant requests a stay of enforcement until the full appeal process is exhausted. I don't know what that means exactly. The full appeal process is exhausted.
I think what we were requesting there is that there's no, that if the DRB decides that to uphold the violation, that an enforcement action not be brought with penalties and fines until we can take it to the next level. Just a request.
Oh, I
mean,
see.
it's the town's prerogative what they want to do.
The first part of that was only requesting that the violation be dropped because I'm only cutting my firewood at this point. It's not a violation. Per 24 VSA, if you're involved with a active forestry operation or logging operation, the municipality cannot regulate that. 24 VSA 4413.
Penny Miller again. Doesn't it, am I thinking wrong, that wouldn't even play a part in this? Because if you're cutting wood for yourself, you could do that irrespective of whether you have have a forestry plan or
Absolutely.
not?
That's why the forestry plan was submitted. That's why I said a simple phone call could have involved all of this and we wouldn't even be here if, you know, 'cause I told Brad on September 26th that all my orders were done, that I was working on my firewood from that point forward and nobody else was going to be delivered unless it was seasoned wood that had been purchased offsite. I said I would try to wrap up my operations by October 15th, but being this conversation happened before I purchased the sugaring arch on October 1st, I'll be cutting more firewood to burn in that sugaring arch to produce maple syrup. And I don't know how many cords it'll take. I'm going to probably cut an extra 10 just to be safe, make sure I don't run out of firewood because we could have another bumper crop of a year like we did last year. But that'll all be wood harvested off my property.
So you think by March you'll have 1,300 taps? Or what do we think?
No, not if the equipment doesn't keep breaking. I won't have money to buy tubing.
All right.
I think you said some of the wood you were going to saw for making them sugar house. Okay.
These logs and these photos are all saw logs. There are hemlock logs and some tamarack in there. And it did not come off my property. It was being stored down there. These logs were trucked across the bridge immediately to the right, right there about 40 feet past the bridge. They're still sitting right there. If anybody wants to come over and check it out, I can show you. They were not processed. It's what I'm going to build my sugar house with, which is an agricultural building. I'm boiling right now in my barn, which I've turned into a sugar house. Just kind of jerry-rigged it up and it's going to work for this year. And then I will build a sugar house either next year or the year after when I have funds available for that. But just try to save myself money. Sometimes I get nice saw logs that come off of there's only like 5 or 6, and I gather them up, stockpile them, and it's free timber, free lumber. So I take it to a sawmill and they saw it up, and there you go. 2x6s, 2x8s, 12s, whatever. And it's the perks of having your own log truck.
So that wood will go from Tisbert's property to a sawmill?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It will not go
Not
through my
to-
processor. I can only cut 24-inch long, and it doesn't make pretty lumber.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were going to have a portable sawmill to
Nope.
cut that wood.
No. Oh, well, I mean, I would hire somebody with it, but it's not wood that came off my property. So technically I can't hire a portable sawmill to come in there and do it. Any other questions?
I don't think so. We'll open it up to Justin. You want to represent? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, Justin Barnard. Thanks, Brad. Justin Barnard, I'm an attorney with Dinsey, and I represent some of the neighbors to Mr. Williamson's operation, Russ and Trish Vogel. Russ Vogel's here tonight, and Nicholas Burrell and Heather Sikorsky. Let's start by saying my clients and I think any of the neighbors in the area of Mr. Williamson's operation have no bone to pick with him conducting a forestry operation on his own land, processing wood that is harvested on his land on site. That's his right. My clients are fine with that. Throughout this entire process, though, they felt like they've been playing a game of whack-a-mole. You know, this started over a year ago in October of 2023 when they first raised the fact that there was an unpermitted sawmill operated right next to Heather and Nicholas's property, along with a log storage yard, logs piled right next to the property line. And the DRB eventually agreed that it was an unpermitted sawmill operation. And Mr. Williamson pivoted and moved that operation in part onto his own property and kept on storing logs next to my client's property on the Tisbert land. And for a period, hauling logs from that property up to his property to harvest. That again came before the DRB, and you held correctly that notwithstanding his application for a home industry permit, it was still an unpermitted sawmill if he was taking wood from off of the property and processing it on his property. So today, and at the time that we reported that we believed Mr. Williamson was still operating out of compliance with the town's zoning regulations, there continued to be logs stored in what was the log yard for the operation that the DRB held originally was an unpermitted sawmill. As of October 19th, Mr. Williamson was still loading up wood from that log yard and moving it off the property towards his own property. There was processing taking place, and my clients understood that what was being processed, or they assumed that what was being processed was coming from off of the property. I hear Mr. Williamson say that he moved logs off of his property and then back onto it, but that's exactly the kind of game of whack-a-mole that has been very frustrating to the neighbors in this area, that things are being moved around and they don't want to shut down his rightful forestry operation on his own land. He's entitled to that. But what they do want is to make sure that it happens in a way that's consistent with state and local regulation, and that it's not being used as a cover for continuing this unpermitted operation, which, you know, is twice continued past when the DRB said, no, you're not allowed to do that. So my clients they're not asking for much here. They're looking for the for the log yard immediately adjacent to their property on the Tisbert land to be cleared up. And it sounds like Mr. Williamson is going to do that. But we just want definition. We want, you know, to be absolutely clear that Mr. Williamson is going to stop storing logs and moving them between that log yard and his property. And we want it to be clear that any processing that that takes place from here on is of wood that is actually harvested on his land, because the exemption for forestry operations and for portable sawmills only applies to sawmills used on site in connection with the timber harvest. So if it's happening on site in connection with the timber harvest, that's great. But otherwise, he needs to operate in compliance with the town's regulations, and it's not exempt. So that's the gist of it. We're looking for, I think, fairly modest relief, which is just to have him clean up the log yard and confine his operations to his property.
I got a question for you.
Sure.
So based on your logic, it's against our regs to store logs on Tisbert's land?
Well, a sawmill is defined in your regulations as a wood processing facility, including yard areas where logs are stored and processed into lumber. So there's no question that logs were stored on the Tisbert land and processed. He's continuing to use that area. The log piles have stayed there, and he's been continuing to use it as an adjunct to the processing on his own property. It sounds like that's going to stop, which is great. We just want clarity there.
Yeah, well, we've made it pretty clear that we don't want him processing any wood there. Storing the logs on the property, I didn't read that in the regs, so thank you for pointing that out to us. Has anybody, your client or you or anybody on your side, gone up to Mr. Williamson's land and looked around to determine if the logs are in fact being cut on there or not?
No. To my knowledge, no. Oh,
okay. Okay.
So you would have to come to the mic
Yeah.
if you're going to speak.
My name's
Just don't touch that.
My name's Nicholas Burrell. You know, we've had his wood yard on camera this entire time. He's been bringing the wood. He's pivoted multiple times, saying that, I'm, Joe Tisbert's land manager. Now I'm, trying to get a permit for something else. This is it. Are you all of those things? None of those things? What is this? And we have to keep coming down here with our representation and interpreting your regulations for you. And it seems like I've heard it been said muddy. They're trying to change the regulations currently now. The regulations are not muddy. It's the enforcement of them, which is muddy. Okay. That's the only thing, that I would like to say. And, this just seems silly that we keep having to come down here. Gordon's supposed to be the forestry logger guy. If you're such an expert, why did you do all this stuff and continually pivot? Because he is a business person that put the cart in front of the horse. If you went down the street and saw somebody yelling at their horse saying, "Why can't you pull this cart?" and the horse was behind it, wouldn't you say, "Hey, let's stop yelling at the horse"? This is what's happening with Mr. Williamson. He bought a house, wanted to make a business. It was against regulations. He obviously doesn't care about the regulations, or he is an incompetent business person. Because I wouldn't try to set up a business where it's not regulated. That would be one of the first things that I would look into, And from the beginning, we have asked him, hey, this is not cool. This is not a very Vermont thing to do, to just set up right next to our house, 100 feet from our window, And I thought that this was just going to be one phone call to the town to say, hey, there's an unpermitted business going on down here. This guy's trucking in logs from somewhere else. I read your regulations. It seems to me that that's not the case. We had to hire representation to come and interpret these regulations for you guys. And now, he's trying to get the regulations changed. It's silly. The regulations are in there for a reason. And as Brad, you told me before, the town doesn't go around and try to enforce regulation and look for violations. Well, it seems like the regulations are written just for that. There certainly are people that are running a business like Gordon, or maybe, doing unregulated things for maple syrup production. But you know what? They have enough courtesy to their neighbors to not make a commotion and, not have somebody complain. And furthermore, those people that do that, probably if their neighbors come to them and complain and say, hey, can you please don't do this? It's right next to a cluster of houses. It's harming the enjoyment of our home. Most Vermonters would say, okay, I'll find another way to do it. And we had asked Gordon that. I begged him to move somewhere else, and he told me no. The only thing that he was going to do is not cut until 8 a.m. in the morning. I begged Joe Tisbert, who I have a great relationship with. I've done many of their catering events down there, slaughtered animals for them, worked on the farm. I said, Joe, can you please find another way to do this? You own so much land in the valley. And he said, give me some time. But when Gordon caught wind of that, it seemed like now we're all in this fight. We are tens of thousands of dollars into this. This is absurd. Okay. I'm so upset that we have to be here again. And I feel like it's really falling on deaf ears, really. And that's all I have to say to you guys. I thank you for your time. But to answer your question, we know that he's bringing in logs from another place. We see it. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I'm there all the time.
But you personally haven't gone onto the land and looked around.
No, but I see his driveway and his wood yard in our security cameras, and you can see him trucking it in from other places. So there's no, and I don't want to be videoing him every time he goes to the end of his driveway, but I feel like I have to, because we're trying to protect our investment of our home and enjoy our property, and it just seems like he keeps pivoting, and back to the whack-a-mole thing, it's absurd. The first time he used the acceptable management practices for forestry, and he comes with something from the Tisberts that says he's the forestry management there, and now he's not the forestry management there. Then he's a permit in this spot and that spot, and now he's a management practice from Butternut Farms, and I question the validity of any of these papers. They're all how do we know that somebody didn't just sign that and date that? It's not like it's notarized. And we just really want the wood removed from the yard. He's obviously still operating Pleasant Valley Firewood from there, as Brad had given us a link to say that he was trying to sell log length firewood. A few days ago, he's got a log length firewood for sale from that very wood yard. So he actually still is operating from that location. And each time he's just pivoting and trying to say like, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm a maple sugar. So I'm gonna do that now. And I don't want to take up too much of your time, because I can be very long-winded. And I don't want to have me just complaining. But I had to tell you that, guys, we've been here a couple of times now. This seems pretty absurd. We just want to enjoy our property, and we don't want to have a fight with anybody. I begged this man to please move down the field. Joe owns, 700, 1,000 acres. They couldn't find another spot. If you're familiar with the spot, are any of you guys familiar with the spot? It's very close to our house, very, And he also set up shop while we were out of town. We were gone for 3 months. So we came home from vacation to this, unbeknownst, and
So you got your 5 minutes.
Sorry.
You want to talk
very
more?
Sorry. Thank you for cutting me off. I would talk for another 20 minutes.
Well,
so sorry, guys.
I'm watchful of the time. I
understand.
think we get the gist of your testimony. We're following our process, right? So the process here is we've made a decision on the wood processing operation. Brad has issued a notice of violation. Mr. Williamson has appealed that. That's why we're here. Right? So, I mean, that's per our regs. That's what we're doing. So, you have any questions for Mr. Boral?
Yeah, I guess one of the frustrations for me is the initial time that it took to, get the reading back. We were told that in that time for the ruling, for the initial, when you had wrongly ruled, you had told us like why was it so long? And you said that you had been consulting with the town's attorney. It just seems to me like I'm a layman and
no, no, I'm going to speak. We have 45 days from the close of the evidentiary portion of the hearing to issue our decision.
Yeah.
We try not to take that long, but sometimes we do.
Okay. But before that, before the ruling,
Before the ruling went.
like when we made our initial,
Yeah.
And I think, this is to some extent older history, but it speaks to the frustration. The original complaint was made in October of 2023, and there was no decision on the complaint and on the original operation until I think April of 2024. So that was the delay he was referring to, not the DRBs.
It didn't come before our board, so
It
we
didn't.
can't.
So,
really-
and I will just have to say that while it was brought to my attention in October, operations ceased before winter time. So nothing happened from November till April 1st. April 1st, I made a decision.
sure. But
The DRB overruled that decision. So that's where, so just to be clear for the record, it's not like there was an operation going on there and we were just sitting doing nothing. I was studying the regulations. I'm the town administrator. I'm filling in for interim town zoning administrator. So I'm holding 2 full-time jobs. And during that process, we have a town report, budget, lots of things. I'm one person. So I do the best I can. So I'm sorry if it wasn't timely enough, but here we are.
And happy to answer any other questions, but appreciate your time. And we are at the end of hopefully at the end of a lengthy process. And we're really, despite the frustration, just trying to get some clarity and resolve the situation.
Sounds good. Thanks. So,
did you have another question? I'm sorry, Penny?
of course,
Of course, Penny Miller. So it's sounding to me like Gordon is saying he intends to get the wood cleared off that site and that he is only processing wood for himself and is having logs made into lumber for his project. So it sounds to me like he's doing what you would like him to do or intends to, but you would like a date. It sounds like you would like a commitment of a date because obviously the logs can't just disappear in one day. So you want clarity on that. I would like to know, Justin, if you have an opinion about logs being stored. I mean, I think that could solve the problem, but I also just want to be clear. Are we talking about the logs being removed from the Tisbert's property because the regulations say they can't sit there, or because Gordon is deciding to try and make this right by himself and everyone and clearing the logs? You just read something that said logs being stored somewhere and processed. What if Gordon were a middleman who was buying logs or cutting logs on someone's property, storing them there, and then selling them to someone else and has nothing to do with processing those logs, and he's just storing them there? Are you saying that is outside the regulations also, or not? Is that an issue that we have to deal with and make sure that happens because that's a regulation? I don't recollect that in what I've looked at in the regulations.
Well, that is not the situation in that, I mean, you had what is under your regulations, a sawmill operating with a log storage yard, and you determined that that was not permitted. And so you have this operation that includes a log storage yard that was out of line with
Right.
your zoning regulations. And he has continued to use that yard in connection with then the operation which moved in part across the street to his property. Would it be a different situation if he had just come and punked a pile of logs there without any sawmill? I don't know. But it is still part of an operation that you determined was not permitted. And we're asking both to be a good neighbor and because we think that it is still a continuing violation because it is a persistent part of the operation that you held was inconsistent with your zoning regulations. We're asking you to direct him to clean that up and move the logs upside.
You got one more question for you, Justin. So Brad sent a notice of violation about activities at 623 Pleasant Valley Road. You guys, I think, if I'm drawing my conclusions correctly, are worried about the lumber being stored across the street from 621 next to your house, right? And according to our regs, storing the lumber there constitutes a sawmill operation, right? According to our regs. So the Tisbert parcel, we haven't really identified that by number or location or street address or anything. 633, but the odd number would mean it'd be on your side of Pleasant Valley Road. Should be a 632 or, yeah. So we have two issues going here simultaneously, if I can keep these straight in my head. We've got the issue of stored logs that have not been removed on, we'll call it the Tisbert parcel. And then we have a notice of violation that Brad issued on the 623 parcel. And the main concern is you guys want, I think if I'm drawing this conclusion correctly, you guys want the Tisbert parcel cleaned and restored and cease and desist any log processing operation on Tisbert land. I didn't hear any testimony per se about 623 tonight, or did I miss it?
Only that there was
Some
timber being
activity,
trucked
yeah.
from the site adjacent to Nicholas and Heather's property to 623.
Okay.
After the DRB had already ruled that was not a permitted sawmill operation. So I don't think that you can look at them separately and say.
No, I'm not trying to, but logs are logs and processing is processing, but I want to make sure that we identify the issues, make sure we identify all the issues.
I just want to be clear about something. The wood that Gordon has over on Tisbert's land now, you said originally came from your land.
Correct.
And it's now basically all going back over.
Yes.
Okay.
Dan, you're looking like you got a question. No. Thank you, guys.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, for,
Karen McKnight, for Gordon.
I'll be coming back.
yeah, we have to go around the room, Karen,
Yeah.
first. Okay, so when Gordon comes back up. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So anybody online have any questions? Going once, going twice. All right, Brad will give you the opportunity to redirect if you have any additional comments.
Not really, just one thing. So as I said, when you issue a notice of violation, there's a 7-day remedy period. So I appreciate, I would just like Gordon to understand the pressures that I get from all sides. And so it's a two-way street. You also could have reached out to me and explained those same things, and then I could have relayed that to the other party, and maybe we wouldn't be here, maybe we wouldn't, maybe we would. So I think while, and I appreciate the, what the neighbors had to say about kind of the state of flux of this whole operation and getting some kind of finality to it. So if that gets accomplished tonight, then I think it was a constructive time spent. I guess that's all I have to say. And yes, and just to reiterate the fact that it was brought to my attention in October, towards the middle or end of October, that this operation was taking place. I did work with Gordon. Gordon was amenable to shutting down the operation and was shut down by November, I think Thanksgiving time. So no wood was processed from Thanksgiving to the time my decision, April 1st, came out. So April 1st decision came out, and then we started this long process of where we are today. So anyway, I appreciate everybody's, this has been most frustrating for me. So as I said, I wear two hats here, big hats, and it's difficult. I lost my cool at the last hearing, which I apologize for. But it's just a lot of stress for one person. And you try to do the right thing. You try to make the right decisions. Rules aren't always easily interpreted. There's gray areas. But I think I hope some good comes out of all of this. So, thank you.
Being represented by council, so technically, I hate to tell people they can't participate. 2 minutes. Actually, 5.
I'll take 2. I'm sorry. Heather Sikorsky, 612 Pleasant Valley Road. I think it's actually been most frustrating for us. I'm not saying it hasn't been frustrating, but we have spent a ridiculous amount of money for this whole thing. And if this had been shown, that wouldn't have needed to happen. So this seems like a joke to me and not valid for that reason. It's Butternut Farms document. So that's all I wanted to share.
So I have a question for you. Are you certified forester?
No, I'm not.
Do you have any training in forestry?
I don't.
Okay.
It seems a joke in the fact that we have gone back and forth, this whack-a-mole piece. And this was never presented when he could have been cutting on his land the entire time.
You got 4 more minutes if you. Okay. So Gordon, we'll give you an opportunity to come on up and redirect.
So I'll be very brief. And I know, Ms. McKnight, you had a question, so maybe you want to ask that first.
I have one question, and that is about the removal of the logs. Would that not be dependent on what kind of weather it is? And if we have
Absolutely.
a really rainy, I mean, if we said something like, well, those should be moved by, making this up, January 1, or we might not even go there with that. But if it rained, I would think that a heavy truck going in there would not be a good thing.
I've already been stuck in that field once. It's not fun. It takes a lot of equipment to get it out of there.
Yeah, I just.
For the record, the last time that truck has been moved was November 11th. It was down at Bailey Spring and Chassis in Essex Junction. I can provide receipts for that. For Mr. Burrell to say that I was just moving stuff around a couple of days ago, I thought we were under oath to speak the truth. That truck, I have the receipts for a complete front end rebuild on that truck of $2,800. It's not legal for the road right now. And before that, the main cylinder on the boom blew out, and I have a receipt for that. The truck has not been run. I have not been trucking logs into my property. And then shortly after, I cut the 2 cords on Veterans Day that were loaded onto the deck previous to the mechanical failure of the truck. I had a vasectomy, so I couldn't move for a week. So I have not been trucking logs in and out of my property to cut. The logs have been up there. I trucked the 3 loads on October 19th onto the other side of the bridge and left those there. I do still haul logs for people that want to buy them. I have loggers that have wood that needs to be moved, and I have a log truck, so I still move logs. If I don't have somebody to buy them that night, you betcha they do go up my driveway, and they sit on the truck strapped down overnight, and then they go right back down out of the driveway. That's what they're not saying. It's the log truck goes back out loaded just as much as it comes in loaded. So that is allowed to do. I can do that any day of the week that I want. Drive a truck across the road. It's commerce. You know, I have a log truck. I sell logs. Just like purchasing the 36 cords of seasoned firewood from Andy Naylor and driving them to landowners' houses. There's no permit needed to drive a truck over the road. So if it goes uploaded, it goes uploaded, but it comes right back out loaded just as well. Go ahead, Penny.
So Gordon, if you buy log lengths that you're reselling, you are not now or from this point on putting them on that Tisbert property.
No.
You're taking them to your own and letting them sit there and then bringing them to someone else, right?
Correct. I have not brought in logs to that property since July 21st of this year. That's when I pulled the processor off the property and brought it up to my house. And at which point, that point in time, I applied for the home industry permit to the DRB, which was denied. That I'm very well aware of that it has been denied. And then once it went through the application process and you guys reviewed it, and then we had the meeting, you had your time after to still review. And once the decision was made, I believe I had the appeal period. I think that was till the 11th, but I had already finished all of my orders for this summer. And nothing else was cut off my processor from September 26th on. And I get that, Brad, you take a lot on your shoulders for this town, and I appreciate the work you do. But no other person in the town calls the town to tell them they're going to be cutting firewood on the property. I get that there has been a dispute ongoing. Trust me, it's just as long for me as it is for everyone else. And I'll be blunt, it does suck. I do not like the position that any of this is bringing any of us into. But the reason that at this point in time I am going to the Planning Commission and petitioning them to change the definition is because the definition of sawmill states that where logs are stored and processed into lumber and other wood products. I mean, I could be making rolling pins or wagon wheels or anything that's created out of wood on somebody's property by logs not harvested on that property is a sawmill by definition of the town. I'm not a crappy business person. Did I move in and think it was a forestry operation because I managed Joe's property? Yes, I did. The Title 10 and Title 12 are very, very misleading because they both have definitions from the Commissioner of Department of Forestry and Parks and Rec. It took you guys quite a while. You used almost the 45 days to determine that ruling from the April meeting this year. So the reason I'm going to the Planning Commission is because I at least want the opportunity to cut logs and process them on my property as a home industry. Right now, it's zoned for Route 15 corridor when you have at least 6 other sawmills right now that are operating in the town of Underhill, one with a conditional use permit right down here on River Road that was issued however many years ago that do the same exact thing as mine. I at least want that same opportunity for my house as a landowner and resident of the town of Underhill. And right now I can't get it while I sit here and watch all these guys do it. It's not fair to me as a landowner or a taxpayer. So that's why I'm petitioning the town. It's not because I moved here, bought a house and property with 55 acres and be like, oh, by the way, I'm just going to do this unregulated thing, against all the bylaws. No, I did it. It was skewed. I admit I made a mistake. I did work with Brad and we we're like, well, it's a 50-50 shot. It could be permitted. It might not be. But we took a chance, and here we are. Yes, it has been a long fight. I agree, and I'll admit it, be the first to admit it along with anybody else. But at this point, you know, a definition that is so vague that you can't even make rolling pins for poor old granny, you know, because it's a wood product. It's not fair to any person. And the reason I'm fighting that is because of the fact that I don't want anybody else in this town that would want to be an entrepreneur to start up a wood business, because of the fact that the people that do it now are getting older and may retire or die soon. Who are you going to get your firewood from? Mr. Burrell buys firewood from a firewood producer in this town to heat his home. If they shut this down and all that, who are they going to buy firewood from? It won't be me, but I'm just saying, at this point in time, there's 6 or 8 producers in this town, and 2 of them are over 80, 2 of them are over 60, and there's not a lot of other people starting up in the firewood business. It's not a moneymaker. I'll be the first to vouch to that. I'll show you my credit card bills with all the repairs that I do to that truck. You have anything to add, sir?
All I was going to add was, you know, I hear the neighbors' concerns, and it sounds like, and I hear your concerns. It sounds like those concerns are going to be addressed with the field being cleaned, the Tisdale property being cleaned up. In order for the DRB to impose a remedy, so to speak, they first have to find that there's a violation. There is no violation here because it's not a sawmill. I think that's been established.
Come on, you got a question. I was just putting my button so to ask if you had any questions, Penny.
You're saying it's no longer a sawmill. Exactly what do you mean? Because
well, it doesn't fit the definition, so it fits the exemption because we've gone through at length.
Because he's not cutting.
Right now.
Correct.
Right now, it's not a sawmill.
Correct, and
so he's not. You're saying he's not in violation because it's not operating as a sawmill.
Correct, and right, and when he went through the normal processes to do what he was doing. First with Brad and getting an opinion, and when that was appealed and overturned, he tried to get a permit for conditional use. That was overturned. So he's not operating a sawmill. He's operating under his forest management plan, only harvesting wood from his property.
Just to add to that real quick, that forestry management plan, it has to be completed every 10 years by a certified forester by the state of Vermont. That packet, it's not a joke. It's stamped with a seal of approval from a certified forester that is licensed by the state of Vermont. And it's Fran Sladek that works for Butternut Mountain Farms.
And the property's in current
use. Absolutely. I mean, if we need to talk to Sherry to show that I get a tax exemption for 53 of the 55 acres that are in current use, I can do that as well. Yes.
So, Penny Miller, what is a reasonable, in your mind, asking you this, what is a reasonable amount of time or a deadline to remove the wood that's on the Tisbert's property and clean that up? And maybe it has to be weather dependent, and you have to say by such and such a date, and if the weather is bad, I request until such a, or the ground has to be frozen for 1 solid week or something like that. What in your mind is, how soon could you get that taken care of?
I mean, 3 or 4 loads is nothing. You are correct. My truck is roughly 39,000 pounds empty. And then when I'm loaded, that wood's pretty dry. So it'd probably be about 65,000 pounds. So it would create quite an impact if the ground wasn't frozen. So at this point, even though we are technically, I don't know if we're in a drought still or not, but we were in drought status, but you drive into the river bottom land right there in that field, and it's completely soaked because the back section is a marshy swamp area. It has to be frozen for a good 2 weeks before I can get in there. If with these cold colder nights coming up with really low temps, if it stays like that and we don't get any more snow cover, then the ground will freeze hard enough for me to get in there temporarily and grab the stuff out of there. But I would say if we get the snow that they're calling for, Wednesday, Thursday night before we get the really hard frost and cold temps, then it'll still make an impact. I would say to be safe, with the winters we've had in and out of there, I would say by February 1st is an attainable measure. Just because, one, I have to be able to get into the field and then get back out loaded. And then number two, wherever I'm bringing it to, because it is my property, I have to be able to find a spot to set it over there as well.
And isn't that just one pile that you're talking about? Weren't you talking about two other piles you're trucking somewhere
I've got one pile by the road
else?
that's going to be delivered to a homeowner.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter. I could probably grab that at any time
Okay.
because there's a gravel entrance right there. The stuff that is in the back of the field and along the property line, that would probably take just a little bit of time.
So you're saying you feel like by February 1st, barring climate change, that we don't get a winter, you could have that completely cleared up.
Yep. And I'd like to make sure at that point in time, the wood, other than the stuff right next to Pleasant Valley Road along the pavement, the wood that is in that field came from my property. So when I do truck it off, there's no need of cameras, video, photo evidence and stuff. We all are here. We all know that it needs to be removed from the field. That's the end game for me and the neighbors. There's no, I mean, they stand out in the middle of the road taking pictures of me and videos and all that. And I mean, and I had, one of them was up there in bare feet in a bathrobe at 9:45. It's taking pictures, in the morning. I mean, it's just, at this point, it's borderline harassment. The wood needs to be moved. I will get it out of there. It's just most of it's weather dependent and time dependent and equipment. Like if I blow out a cylinder on my boom, I can't pick up a log. So,
but you would communicate that and everything could be communicated.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Brad and Charlie, could I ask you, do you have any other questions or concerns? Okay.
Not for good. So. Any final comments, Justin? You guys are all set? Yeah. Anyone online care to comment? Seeing nobody wishes to comment, I'd ask the board if they feel they have enough information to make a decision on the appeal before us. I see everybody shaking their head, so I'm going to state for the record, the board feels they have enough information to make a decision on the appeal. I'd ask for motion to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing.
I'll make a motion to pause or
Close.
Close the evidentiary.
Is there a second?
I second that.
So motion by Matt Chapik, seconded by Shani Bartlett. Is there any discussion on the motion to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Ask the board to deliberate in executive session on this application before us, or in this appeal before us. So, I'm sorry. I've got a script here I'm not reading accurately. I'd like a motion to deliberate in closed session.
I'll make a motion to deliberate in closed session.
Is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
So a motion by Karen McKnight, seconded by Dan Lee to deliberate in closed session. So what we're going to do now is we'll close the hearing to the public. We've closed the evidentiary portion of the hearing. We'll issue our decision within 45 days. Hopefully it won't take us that long to get it out. There's an appeal period after our written decision is issued. If you signed in, we'll give you a copy. We'll send you a copy of the decision and the proceedings. And thank you for your participation. All right. We have to, we have minutes that we have to approve.
Okay.
And we have,
They're still being done by Donna?
they're still being.
Yes, Donna. I sent them all to you before Thanksgiving. I know there's a pile of them. Sorry, we'll do better at keeping up with them. Did you want to talk schedule or other business quick or after?
We, so one of the things that we have to talk about is we're going to deliberate on your appeal, so you
No,
technically can't be here.
No, okay. So
Right.
that's fine. Let's do the minutes.
So let's do the minutes, let's do the schedule, then
Yep.
show us how to lock up and,
Sure.
or you
I'll
could
lock
go
you up.
downstairs. Yeah. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. So we have a number of minutes that we have to approve.
I have them here. Hopefully in order.
So I thought they were like May 1st, right?
May 6th.
May 6th.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah.
6.
Yes.
That wasn't that long ago.
Holy macaroni. You guys all kind of that?
I'll give them to you one at a time.
I was there. What was this?
So we got to stay on the mics, you guys, because so Donna can catch all this.
Oh,
So we
this
can
is-
all turn our mics on. It's okay.
Oh, I'm saying this isn't really pertinent.
Yeah, no. If everybody turns their mics on, then we're good. Okay.
Okay, what about,
So-
So May 6th was the first Gordon Williamson hearing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was trying to figure out what it was. Okay.
And I had to recuse myself. So members present were Matt Chapik, Karen McBride, Brian Birch, Shani Bartlett, Meg Armstrong, and Penny Miller.
Are there 4 of us here?
So there's 4 of you guys here. Any
Sounds
corrections
like-
on the minutes?
don't we make a motion, or is that?
Yeah,
already
they
made?
should make a motion to approve
I'll make a
minutes of May
motion to approve
6th.
I make a motion to approve of the May 6, 2024 minutes.
So motion by Karen, seconded by Shani. Any discussion, any corrections?
No.
All those in favor who were present that night should approve.
Aye.
So motion carries.
Sign those, we'll do it as we go.
Okay.
Can I make just a suggestion how we do it in the select board to make things kind of quick?
Yeah.
Or more efficient? Charlie makes the motion to move, to approve the minutes, somebody else seconds, then you have discussion.
Okay.
So Charlie makes the motion each time.
Okay.
Oh,
And then we go through them all, you mean, at one time?
No, we're just going to
Oh.
take them one at a time here,
Oh,
May
all right.
26th or 20th.
so you're only looking for a second from us?
Yeah, exactly. So Charlie's going to say, I move we approve the minutes from May 20th, and
Okay.
one of you seconds, and then,
Okie dokie.
not saying it's right, but
As
how
long
we,
as long as
Let's,
Charlie's.
well, we've got a chunk of them to go through, so let's do that. So the next one are May 20th.
Who's that?
So members present were Brian, Matt, Shani. Matt Chapik was there twice.
I was there twice.
Yeah. And this was about Luke Danderian, I think.
So,
Yes.
yeah, there's a correction to the minutes. I don't know if you want to wait till
yeah,
after. he
so
makes
let
a
me,
motion.
let Charlie make the motion.
So a motion to accept the minutes of May 20th.
So were there 4 people for the May
No.
20th?
So we need a second.
I'll second.
So Matt was there and he can second it. It's me, Matt, Shani, and Dan.
And I'd like to make a correction. I'd like to have discussion on it. I was there.
You were
So
present.
Matt, that was twice. Really, I'm
So
one of those
really, it
Matts.
should be,
Penny Miller.
There's one little,
Typo.
third to last bullet.
third to last bullet.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Having part of the lot is in.
Fourth line down. In the third bullet up.
Having part of the lot, oh,
I just didn't.
In.
Something should be there or should be there.
no, it says having part of the lot in the soil and water conservation district may suggest that subdividing.
So the
Maybe
word
just say
is-
because part of the, that
Just
you
take
should.
his out.
Just
Yeah, I
take
think
it
if you strike the word is, you're good.
Where do you see is?
Second
Having
part.
lot. Oh, in, yes, in, yeah.
Just strike
All right,
is.
so I'm going to correct these and then Charlie's going to sign them later.
Okay, so those are approved with the corrections.
Approved with corrections.
Everybody who agrees signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Next up are the minutes of July 1st. So myself, Matt, Shaney, Dan, Penny, and Karen, everybody was there. The only people that were missing was Brian Birch. These were the initial hearing of the Harvest Market proposal. Dan Mance and company, Harvest Crossing. George McCain. We took a lot of testimony, but we didn't make a decision. We wanted more info. I make a motion to approve these minutes of July 1, 2024.
I can second it.
Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, next up is the minutes of
August 19th.
August 19th. And
Must be this. Charlie, Brian, Shaney, we do not have a quorum to approve these minutes.
oh, we don't? Brian's got to be here.
Brian has to be
Oh,
there.
yeah. Can we do it over email? No.
We shouldn't.
Okay.
Should not.
So
we'll
we're gonna,
skip
yeah,
those.
we'll table those. And then the next up are the minutes of December
26.
26th. These are still Harvest Crossing. And the members present were myself, Matt, Dan, and Penny. So I make a motion to approve the minutes of August 26th.
I'll second.
Matt seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes of August 26th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Okay, next up, or last up, I think, right?
Yep.
Is the minutes of September 23rd, 2024. This is the final hearing, the preliminary plat hearing for Harvest Crossing. The members who were there were Dan, Matt, Karen, Penny, and myself. I will make a motion to approve the minutes from Monday, September 23rd.
I'll second it.
So seconded by Karen. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. So our next move on our agenda after minutes is going to be schedule.
No, we're kind of,
Or are we?
it's supposed to be other business, which would have been scheduled first and then minutes, but that's okay.
Sorry.
So I'll just talk briefly about the schedule is there is no schedule. So we may have a sketch plan review probably after the first of the year. All this stuff will be after the first of the year, I think. So sketch plan review and possibly the Piney Grove saga is still going on. So with the setback issue. So anyway, that's what I know.
Is this the carport? Is that
Yes. Yes.
You want to make that guy move that, don't you?
I do.
So anyway, that's all I have. If you want to,
I'm going to cancel my vacation plan to be at that one.
When you going on vacation?
if you want to make a motion to adjourn, I can stop the recording.
Let's.
Actually, I have a question.
Sure.
Sure.
I just want to make sure, so the hearing that we just, this is just for me and I don't want to sound stupid. So whatever we write today, it's a decision based on the hearing today?
Yes.
We're writing a decision.
Yes.
And the decision needs to include what did you give them, a notice or a?
So you're
Yeah.
deciding whether
to sustain or overrule his.
Okay,
violation.
one, anything else? Are we able to add in language that you were talking about with your questions about timing?
Well,
We can.
Part of our
You
decision.
can
I'm not
discuss.
talking
Part of the
details now, I
decision.
just want to understand overview, like, I don't want
So right
the
now,
answer is yeah.
purview of what we're going to be
Yeah.
deciding upon. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brett.
was I correct in issuing a violation notice or not?
Okay, but then the other piece I wanted to know is, we were talking about timing.
Right.
And also the other
That's
piece
up to
is
you
that they
guys.
Okay.
request a stay of enforcement.
Right.
Until.
So you have the appeal in front of you, and so motion to adjourn would be great.
Motion
Yeah,
to
okay,
adjourn.
okay. Thank you.
Anyone want to make a second to my motion to adjourn? All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we can.
It's 7:56 for the record. I always like to have.